away from girls like us, and I didn't have Tilly's hope that those worlds could be bridged. "What was that he called you?" I asked as we neared the factory on the corner of Green Street. "Verbrennte Meidlach," she said, fingering a lock of my chestnut hair, a far less dramatic shade of red than Tilly's own. "He meant both of us, Boobala, because of our hair. It means fiery girls." There was a line for the freight elevators. We weren't allowed in the passenger elevators. "Come on," Tilly said, pulling me toward the staircase. "If we're late, Mr. Bernstein will lock the doors on us. I'll race you." She was off in a flash of red stockings that stayed just out of reach for 9 flights of stairs. We were out of breath and bent over with cramps of laughter, gasping, but we managed to slip through the door a minute before Mr. Bernstein, the foreman, closed the door, locking it behind us. We hung up our coats in the dressing room and hurried to our machines. Tilly was at the end of the back row, a much better place than my spot, against the wall, below the windows overlooking Washington Place, for getting out early at closing time, when all the girls bunched up at the door waiting for Mr. Bernstein to check their purses for stolen lace or ribbons. When I was settled, I spared a moment to look down the long sewing table to where Tilly sat. She was helping a new girl find her place, a tiny malnourished sprite in an oversized dress. Her hands were shaking as Tilly put the scissors in them. "Don't worry, Etta, I'm going to look after you," she told the girl, with a smile that warmed the unheated loft. They were the same exact words Tilly had said to me on my first day here 4 months ago. I'd been even more of a mess than little Etta, driven to take a job in the loud, crowded factory after my mother had died. The only work I knew was trimming hats. Mother had had clients among the richest women in the city, the 400, as she called the cream of New York society. She'd had a deft hand and keen eye for knowing just where to add a feather and tweak a brim and which ribbon suited which color of felt. We didn't have a lot of money, but we managed. Mother always said it was better to be a pauper than a slave to money, and although she sometimes lapsed into melancholic silences, she always rallied herself when she saw me looking worried. Until the day she saw the man in the Inverness cape. It was my 16th birthday. Mother had promised me a walk in Central Park after we delivered one last hat to a client on 5th Avenue. As we were leaving, my mother abruptly halted on the sidewalk, staring across the avenue at the entrance to the park. Following her gaze, I'd seen a man in an Inverness cape who'd lifted his Homburg hat in greeting. His face, dappled by leaf shadow, was indistinct, but I could feel the intensity of his gaze. I found myself unable to look away. As I stared at him, I heard a bell begin to toll. I thought it might be coming from St. Patrick's Cathedral. My mother grabbed my hand and dragged me toward an approaching omnibus. She'd pushed me on, despite my protestations that she had promised me a walk in the park. She had refused to answer when I asked who the man was. "No one," she insisted, and then repeated, "No one." Each time she said, "No one," I heard the bell toll. It kept tolling as we rode the omnibus down 5th Avenue, and eventually I realized that the sound wasn't coming from one of the churches. It was coming from inside my head. It faded after we'd ridden south of 14th Street, leaving a faint ringing in my ears. That night, my mother had complained of a chill in her chest and sent me to the chemist's for a bottle of laudanum. From that day on, she began to drink it regularly. She went out less and less, sending me to deliver hats to our clients, but always warning me not to talk to strangers. Before she got sick, my mother would spend hours in the local libraries, the Astor, the Seward Park, the Hudson Park branch, looking through strange and obscure books while I read the histories, novels, and poetry she recommended, and also as many of Mrs. Moore's novels about girls' school as I could find. But after she got sick, she sent me out for books and then spent her days reading on a chaise longue in front of the window. No matter how many times we changed apartments, she always managed to find one that overlooked the river, which she said reminded her of her beloved Blythewood, the girls' boarding school she'd attended north of the city on the Hudson. She kept an engraving of the school on her bedside table, where another woman might keep a photograph of her husband. But my mother had no photographs of my father, nor would she ever tell me anything about him. Nor would she tell me who the man in the Inverness cape had been. "No one," she repeated when I asked. "No one." When I told her that I had heard a bell in my head when I looked at him, she looked frightened, but then she squeezed my hand and said, "That's because you were born at midnight on New Year's Eve. You're a chime child. The bell will warn you when you're in danger."